Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Work From Home Show. I'm Naresh Fissa with Adam Schrader. Shout out to all our homies, homeboys, homegirls, home trans, all the work from homers out there. Today we have David Horsager on the show. He's the CEO of Trust Edge Leadership Institute, #1 best-selling author of The Trust Edge: How Top Leaders Gain Faster Results, Deeper Relationships, and a Stronger Bottom Line. In the new book, Trusted Leader, 8 Pillars That Drive Results. David, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Part of the reason why we brought you on is because you are one of the world's foremost experts on building trust. Trust is extremely important in business, in relationships and friendships, and life. So let's start with that word trust and your 8 pillars. That's 8 pillars for building trust. What are they?
Well, I think first, if you don't mind, before we get into how to build it, we got to get into what is it? Why? And that's where I just got to come in. If people need to understand that trust is bigger and different than they think. So I'd love to get into and give you the overview of the 8 pillars, but people, wherever you are, this is my first, I'll argue this first side of the research, and the second side of the research is the 8 pillars. And we go back to my grad work 20 years ago and all the work we do on 6 continents and everything. I will argue trust is always the leading indicator of success. Everything else lags. Doesn't matter in relationship, in money, in anything. So in other words, people are solving the wrong issue. They think they have a leadership issue. They never do. The reason they follow a leader or not is trust. They think they have a sales issue. They never do. The reason they buy or not has something to do with trust. They got an innovation issue. The only way to increase innovation on a team is increase trust on the team, so they're not scared they'll share ideas. You got a diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging issue. It's never a diversity issue at the core. The biggest Harvard study shows diversity on its own tends to pit people against each other. The only way to get the best out of diversity, which is absolutely research-based, is to increase trust. So we have to deal with the trust issue. How do you amplify a marketing message? You have to increase trust in the message. How do you increase learning in a classroom? You have to increase trust in the teacher, the content, or the psychological safety or trust of the room. The question everybody's asking about everybody listening today is not, do I like you? I've got friends I like a lot I wouldn't go into business with in a million years. The question everybody's asking is, can I trust you? So first half of the research and our ongoing research shows trust is the leading indicator. A lack of trust is the biggest cost we have. I mean, you don't even have to look at the research and you can think about it. Text someone you trust. How long does it take? Boom, done in a second. Now try to write a text to someone you don't trust. How long does that take? Oh, how are they going to take this? How are they going to take that? Why do you put a lock on anything? Because I don't trust you. And so what's the cost of that lack of trust? Well, you got to buy the lock. That's money, but the big cost is time. Now I got to open it. And a lack of trust is costing teams, families, relationships all the time. So the first half of the research, I just want to get that out there that I believe we have to shift thinking about trust. The reason I wrote that new book, Trusted Leader, is because most people were dealing with the wrong issue. They're saying, oh, it's an engagement issue. The research shows the only way to increase engagement is increase trust. Oh, it's a net promoter score issue. The only way to increase referrals is increase trust. Oh, we got a communication issue. Frankly, you never have a communication issue. Communication is happening all the time. It's the type, and I'll show you when we get to the pillars what I mean by that. But I just got to serve that up that we have to shift thinking because trust is more complex but more important than people actually get, and it's not what people think necessarily. They think, oh, trust is transparency. No, it's not. Some of your kids are so transparent on social media, I don't trust them for a second. It's also confidentiality, So it's just bigger than we think and more important than we think. And when we see trust differently, we're actually able to solve the real issue.
Before you get into your 8 pillars, is there a difference in trust between individuals and a business building trust?
In essence, in basic sense, there isn't. In other words, how we build it. I mean, of course, there's difference in individuals and in organizations from an intimacy and in some ways, but basically that's an interesting concept that you're talking about, because we work with everything from global governments and corruption issues and trust, and it's pro sports teams and all these things. So it's you use the same 8-pillar framework is how an individual would build trust as how an organization would. Doesn't mean you don't have to contextualize it. We absolutely contextualize it, whether it's globally or to that relational context. But it's the same 8 pillars. The only thing I would add to that is organizations never change. Only individuals change. So when an individual changes, then a team, an organization, a country can change. And so, unless that police officer in East Africa stops taking bribes, they're not going to stop corruption. We have to get individuals to see it, whether it's in an organization or whatever. So when we go into organizations, we want to help them, help individuals be able to increase trust, because that's where it starts. And when we do help create a common language, and when we do give them tools they can use, then we've seen the second biggest healthcare organization in North America change the culture because of trust. We've seen, clinics, we've seen pro sports teams, we've seen, massive organizations change, but at least individuals have to be able to apply it. So we can't stay out in theory and research forever. We've got to make it something they can use tomorrow morning that will help them increase trust, which could speed up the sale. It could, lower attrition or retention or whatever. But anyway, so the simple answer is same way we build trust as far as the framework doesn't mean we don't contextualize to the relationship or situation.
Once again, before we get to your 8 pillars of trust, I want to backtrack just slightly to talk about the Trust Edge Leadership Institute. So it seems your books all have the word trust in them. You're the CEO of Trust Edge Leadership Institute. I'm assuming you're maybe the founder of that as well, and you
Yep.
could say that. But tell us what this institute is and what got you so interested in the word trust and the concept behind it.
Right. Our institute is in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I'm standing here right now seeing the team through the glass in my office and different things. But basically, we put out one of the biggest pieces of research on trust and leadership every year. And our mission is to develop trusted leaders and organizations around the world. We do it in 3 big ways. I'll give you a Minnesota word to help people remember it. ICE, I-C-E. Good cold word for you on a hot day. The I stands for inspire, a shift of thinking. I speak, maybe 100 times or more a year around the world on the topic, try to shift thinking, or we do executive days. That's kind of that front end, or the books are kind of inspire, shift of thinking. The C in ICE, the acronym, stands for clarify and measure. So we have 6 ways we measure trust in organizations, everything from Enterprise Trust Index, big organizations built on 30 years of Accenture data and my grad work, all the way down to a simple self-assessment. But from back to Drucker, who said what measures gets managed. I mean, what's measured gets dealt with. And when we can close a gap, we've done the biggest, we've helped the organization or team the most. And the E stands for equip. And that's how we're not flavor of the month. We want to really equip an organization to keep building trust. So we have the reinforcement tools. We have certifying people inside of organizations, everything from, United Health Group to Penn State University, have people certified in this trust work to keep it going. And then we're alongside them and helping them either train others throughout the organization or coach them or keep using this common language to drive results and deal with their biggest challenges. To the previous question, I am passionate about this work, and what made me passionate is you go back a couple decades ago, and I was looking at, what is it about the most successful leaders and organizations, and it was just before my grad work. And first of all, it was intuitive. I still remember where I was in Arizona dealing with this company and thinking the problem they think they're having, it's It's not a leadership problem. That's a trust issue. And I started thinking about this other. That's not a sales issue. That's a trust issue. And I think, oh, that's an innovation issue. That's trust. I just started to kind of intuitively see it. And if you think back to then, there's a lot of people talking about trust today, especially in the last 5 years and decade, with and without research. But back then, there was very little to nothing in this space, especially in business leadership, organizational space. And I started seeing it that way, and so that led to my grad work, and that fueled the passion. And then we used it. The first organization we kind of used the framework deeply in, and little organization, 600 people, they said they drove attrition down by 2 to 4 million in 9 months. And then we used it somewhere else, and they said they tripled sales in 90 days. And then we used it somewhere else, and big company that everybody listening would know, Fortune 50 company, that said they gained 11% market share. And we started using it and seeing it drive results that way. But I'll tell you, that's exciting when you can help organizations, be more trusted and gain market share and make a bigger impact. But what happened along the way was it changed me and how I lead and how I am as a dad and how I am as a husband. And that personal change is probably why I'm so passionate about it, because I've seen leaders change and I've seen organizations change. And it's just now we have seen some really cool things happen, and even in governments and pro sports teams and everything else. But the passion is fueled by me seeing the change every day, even in myself.
Can you go over some of the 8 pillars that people need to be looking at? I think we've distracted you from that long enough.
We got to get through this. So basically, these 8, I believe you can solve every organizational leadership issue against these 8. Now, just to note, we're going to give a quick overview here. You can go into each of them for a full day. But these 8 traits were what came out of that original research as the way trust is built globally, whether in a brand, in marketing, in an individual leader, or global government. They are noted or denoted by C words. Don't be fooled that it's kind of some 8 motivational C's, and I call them pillars in the book, but they stand for kind of research funnels. So, but these C words are a good representation of the intent of how trust is built under each of those funnels. So here we go. Number 1 is clarity. People trust the clear, and they mistrust or distrust the ambiguous or the overly complex. And there's so much we could say about each of these, but people think they're clear when they're not. Or marketing companies, branding, strategy companies think they're clear when they're not. Clarity takes an immense amount of work, but it's incredibly powerful. And clarity, simplicity, that's what's trusted. Number 2 is compassion. We trust those that care beyond themselves. Even if you don't care about me, if you at least better care about something missional beyond yourself, if I'm going to follow you, be accountable to you, or trust you. Number 3 is character. We trust those that do what's right over what's easy. There's some questions leaders can ask. There's also a 7-step process for organizations to be organizations of character. Some people are fooled into an old psychology that says you can, all the character you have or don't by 12 years old. It's totally wrong. You're moving toward or away from character, higher character every day in the way you incentivize it. I mean, unless we stop incentivizing bribery in a certain part of the world with that police officer, it's going to have a hard time moving the corruption needle, which is affecting their GDP as an example. Or up here in Minnesota, we had a big bank, everybody knows, that was incentivizing a lack of trust in their sales part of their organization, even though they had a good mission and vision, all that, that incentivizing sales that way, they were incentivizing a lack of character. And of course, it cost them billions. A pro sports team might incentivize a certain type of, it can be everything from sarcasm, which can be fun for a while until it turns into the root word in the Latin, dog ripping flesh, or until racial slurs. All kinds of things can incentivize or decentivize character. The next pillar, we think character is important. It is, but it's not everything, because the next pillar, number 4, is competency. We trust those that stay fresh and relevant, competent, and capable. And this is why, I might trust you to take my kids to the ball game, but not give me a root canal. You've got to be competent and capable. And this is where people stay the same. If they lead the same way they were 10 years ago or teach the same way they were 20 years ago, I don't trust them. You got to stay fresh and relevant, competent, and capable. Next pillar is commitment. We trust those that stay committed in the face of adversity. I mean, if you take of anybody in your life or history, your mom, dad, first grade teacher, Mandela, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Jesus, or Joan of Arc, and you'll find somebody that was trusted because they were committed to something beyond themselves, often even to death in many cases. So commitment builds trust. The next pillar is connection, the ability to connect and collaborate. Each of these pillars, by the way, if I look in organizations especially, and I can see counterforces, or our team can find counterforces, like a counterforce to, the clarity pillar could be complexity or ambiguity, or compassion. We could see any of the isms or hateful, outright hatefulness, or more common, actually, apathy. Under this pillar, if you see siloing or an unwillingness to share resources for the greater good, you find a counterforce to the connection and collaboration pillar. Seventh pillar is contribution. Really, you should put the word results with it. We trust those that contribute results. Results was the number one word out of the research funnel, and other things like performance outcomes. You can't just have compassion character. You've got to contribute results. I go in for surgery and the surgeon, cuts off the wrong leg. We get a problem, even if they're compassionate or whatever. You got to contribute the results I expected or asked for, and that's the work of work. But you have to have all 8. You can't just have results and not have compassion character. You can't just have, compassion character and not deliver results, as an example. So final pillar is consistency. We are trusted for whatever we do consistently. Sameness is trusted. It's the only way to build a brand as an organization. It's the only way to build a reputation as an individual, for good or bad, by the way. If you're late all the time, I will in fact trust you to be late. Whether you like McDonald's or not, most trust them. I've had the same burger on 6 continents. So that's the 8, and so you can take these 8 and you can solve any. These are the core issues. People say, we got to increase our marketing message. We'll just go by the 8. Is it clear? Is it connecting with our people? Is it compassion? If you this is why I say it's never an engagement issue or a promotion or a communication issue. David, what about communication? Isn't it ever a communication issue? It never is. People say these words and they don't solve anything. Communication is happening all the time. Clear communication, clarity, is trusted. Unclear communication isn't. Compassionate communication is trusted. Hateful communication isn't. High character is, low character isn't, consistent is, inconsistent is. So when you have these 8, you have a simple, clear framework for actually solving the real issue. And there's a glimpse at the 8.
For a lot of our listeners, they're working from home. They're maybe even trying to build a business from home. But if you were, getting hired on by a company, and you've never really met these people in person, you're trying to develop trust virtually, what are some of, how long do you think it would take, and kind of how do you show this in a build this trust in a virtual sense and hit all 8 of the pillars?
And I have a quick follow-up to that, and that is, because Adam asked a good question, is it possible as, let's say, a job candidate or just a regular person, regular human being, you meet somebody and you build that trust, you hit all 8 of these things that you said within a, let's say, 10-minute, 15-minute conversation?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of things we could get into here, but you can absolutely use it virtually. That you just think of how could I increase any one of these? How can I increase clarity? If I'm a job candidate, how can I increase clarity? Most people are totally ambiguous in their resume or cover letter or even in what they're saying. This is why, I could jump all over here, but you think of candidates that for president, whether they really had a good plan or not, in a debate, if the candidate said, well, basically, here's what I would do. First, I would do this. I have a 3-step process. That 3-step process might even be ambiguous, but they just sound like they know what they're doing. If the other candidate says, well, I've got a plan for that. It's kind of like I'm going to do some of these things and do this and this and this. The one that says, I got 3 steps. I would look at this, then I would do this, then I would do this. That clarity just built trust. So you can do that in a resume, in a letter, anything. Compassion's the same way. Am I caring about them? Am I listening well? We talk about under each of these pillars, there's ways to do it. In trusted leader, we have some simple, clear steps people can use tomorrow. And as a leader or a person, it doesn't matter who they are. Don't be scared if you think I'm not a leader. Trusted leader, we assume everybody has some influence. You could use some of those tools, but under compassion, we talk about the laws of compassion, LAWS. Listen, appreciate, wake up and be present, W, and S, serve selflessly. How do I do that? You can show these things, virtually. you can do these things. You might have to get creative. I mean, I think one of the hospitals we were working with, they right at the start of the pandemic, the nurses had to give shots in basically in hazmat suits. So you had these 4-year-olds that would come in for their shot every week. They had to have it for their life, and they would start screaming, crying. They wouldn't take the shot. And so they just got creative. They said, how can we connect? How can we show compassion? Looking at those pillars, and they took pictures of the nurse they were used to with a big smile on their face, and they made a button out of it, and they put that button on the chest of the hazmat suit. And as soon as that 4-year-old would come in, they pointed to the button, say, "Oh, it's just me," and the kid would take the shot because they thought of a different way in the midst of the environment. Let's say pandemic or whatever. We have a whole lot of tools now. We talk about in the midst of pandemic and virtual. Some things are working, and some things, like I think some people are fooled into things that they think work better in a virtual environment. For example, people starting to use polling a lot in meetings online. I think it's generally, the research would show it's a terrible idea as far as engagement, but other things are good ideas. So there's all kinds of ways you can connect, virtually, showing your face, showing video tends to be positive. Some people get burnt out, I know, but generally it's a better way to connect, to see faces when talking to someone, even though by video. And there's a host of other ways. But yes, of course, you can look at those 8 and think, well, how can I show these in this context?
And I also want to talk a little bit about trust in personal relationships, or even, let's say, in marriage, because that's probably top 2 most important qualities that you can have in a good and healthy marriage. So it's not just business trust or branding or a company trust.
Absolutely.
But, how do all these principles, how would you distill them down or maybe caricature them and apply them to, let's say, marriages?
Well, this is a long question because I could go on any of them deeply, but how are you listening? That comes under the compassion pillar to your spouse. How are you? I'll jump into something personally. I mean, I could go into any one of these, but I'll just jump into something people can think about. So clarity, under the clarity pillar, one thing we talk about, it kind of combines with the character pillar. In business, we talk about having decision-making values. That increases a leader's congruence. So that it's not just values. A lot of people have values, faith, family, friends, but decision-making values. Well, my wife and I took that idea that you'll see in the book and jumped that to family. So maybe 20 years ago or something, before we had kids, but I've got an 18-year-old, 18, 16, 14, 12-year-old right now. And we said, well, how could we I said a really romantic question, by the way. I said, honey, what do we want the output of an 18-year-old Horsager to look like? It's very romantic.
Yeah, that's a normal question.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's our output, So what's an 18-year-old look like from our family? And so we just brainstormed one evening. Well, we want them to be grateful. We want them to be generous. We want them to this, that, we want them to do unto others. They would have them do it to you. We just thought these things. We wrote down 13 tenets, I'll say, and we kind of decision-making values, values that we want to make decisions by. We want them to be. So we made this list and we put it on the table where we have breakfast. And, it wasn't some big study every morning, but I would just say something about one of them, and remember, I'm flying a lot. I'm not always there, but I would just say once in a while, I would talk about this one, talk about that one. And just that repeated repetition, number one, we learned they know them by 2 years old. And then, by the way, they start holding you accountable to them. So for those that don't know, I started my first business, Lisa and I did, in a black mold basement with no windows, bathroom, or kitchen. We walked upstairs to 86-year-old Clara Miller's to share her bathroom and kitchen. We had $1.40 to our name by that October, and that's how we started. So we had nothing, and so thankfully we grew through that time, 1999, and so. When my oldest daughter was 5, kids can kind of tell when things change. Maybe you get a big book deal or you get whatever it is, right? And I was flying more, and I thought we should have a better vehicle. And we had 5 kids in 4 years, so we actually had a Suburban at that point, decent vehicle, but not it was older and whatever. And I thought, we should have something that she could that we could count on more here in Minnesota winters as far as age and stuff of the vehicle. And so at 5 years old, we're sitting around the dining room table. I'm thinking we should trade that in and and get something else as I'm traveling more for my wife. And my 5-year-old daughter piped up and said, our value is be generous. You know that family that said they needed a vehicle? Shouldn't we give it to them? And we ended up donating or giving that vehicle to that family because she held us to our values at a time when we could, not trade it in, but give it to them. So sometimes, they also help you live it out when you need that too. But that's one way that combines two of the pillars: clarity of decision-making values and character, and you push them together, and all of a sudden you have an idea you can use to increase, character and clarity in your family. And that's one thing that helped us, raising our kids. I mean, any of these you can go through and leverage. I'll make a comment on one, though, that I think some people could think about. How do you rebuild trust? How do you rebuild it? People say, oh, it's the apology. By the way, you never, ever, ever, ever rebuild trust on the apology. It might open the door of communication, but it never rebuilds trust. I got to, you've met people that say, I'm sorry I'm late. No, you're not. You're late every day. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry you're late. You're late every day. The only way to rebuild trust, whether you're a big company with an oil spill, and we have a 10-step process in the deeper work of how you rebuild it, whether you're a big company or an individual, there's only one way, and that is to make and keep a new commitment. So that's just you have to make and keep a new commitment if you want to be trusted. The other thing, there's different belief systems and everything else here. But when you talk about getting personal about marriage, there's two things that I would bring up. One is openness and accountability are healthy. You could have someone else on this show. I'm sure. I've been married 24 years. Over that, my parents just celebrated their 62nd wedding anniversary. Dad turns 92 in a couple of months here, but I think there's a push toward prenups and kind of have your own accounts and certain things. And I'm not against all of it, but I will say it sets people up for the opposite of trust, which is skepticism and suspicion. And so there's several ways. Accountability comes under one of the pillars, the whole accountability framework in companies. Healthy accountability. You can't have healthy trust without healthy accountability. But I would just say healthy, I just totally trust my wife. But people set themselves against, they set themselves up for skepticism, and you have to set yourselves up for openness. So it's not even a question. Hey, we both see the bank account, all the bank accounts all the time. We both see this. We're part of that. We're in an open environment. So there's some things there we could go very deep in, I know, but there's my first thought.
Yeah, well, to me, based on what you just said, I think of trust having different levels, right? So, for example, there's like big idea trust. In the example you brought up, bank accounts, for example, that's like a big idea trust. If there's going to be, let's say, hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bank account, well, you want to have a trustworthy spouse who's not going to take all that money and go gamble it away in Las Vegas. Right. That's like a big picture thing, and then there are other big picture items. But then you have like little things, right? So it's can I trust you to put out the trash every Friday morning or Tuesday morning? I mean, there are these little things that I don't know if it's trust or just maybe we should use a different word, but many people just aren't good. That's not their forte. It's cooking may not be there for, or cooking good food. I can't trust myself to cook good food.
Fine.
It may not be the forte, or maintaining the house, keeping it clean or whatever. It may not be their God-given talent, right? Sure. So would you say, I don't trust my spouse for cooking a good meal, or I don't trust my spouse to...
I wouldn't say that, number one.
Yeah.
But I would say it's true. You shouldn't trust people, but for what they do. So people even hear me speak, and they'll come up to me after the back of the event, and they'll have me sign books, and they'll say, David, I love this trust stuff. I just love that. I believe in that trust stuff. My boss should have been here. My whatever should have been here. And they talk about everybody else that needs it. Or they'll say, I believe in that stuff. I'm just going to trust that. I want to trust that guy, let's say again. Like, hey, just because I believe in the power of trust does not mean I believe you should trust them for what they did last time. So if that's what he did to you last time, trust that he might do that again. And that's the same with don't just go blindly and say, well, now I'm going to trust this person's going to make a good meal. No, they're not going to make a good meal. That not their forte.
Violates the consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. So you trust them for what they do. So there's ways to increase certain types of trust. In this case, I mean, you can even take this case and say, well, we got to increase competency if we want to increase trust on them making a meal, right? But there are some people, there are differences in marriage. You've got to have that compassion pillar. I mean, people that go into marriage think they're going to change people on these type of issues. It's, hey, we get married and they're going to be good at taking the garbage out on time, and they never were. That's just a bad deal. I mean, don't think so. But there are some bigger and more important things too, as far as the compassion pillar and staying connected and all those things. But on the other hand, I think it is worth keep growing on, capability and competency in marriage, as a parent. I mean, my wife and I have a routine of going to marriage conferences, going to take parenting types of things, because we're like, hey, we need to keep getting better at this. We need to learn at this. Our kids, hey, we needed to know something when they were 2. We need to know something different when they're 18. I mean, it's so that would be under the competency pillar, but there's ways to keep learning. But as far as that, what you said before, it's the consistency pillar. Trust them to do what they've done generally. I'll say one thing else. If you've really broken trust, this would be in marriage or anything, but that's what we're talking about. If you've broken trust in a certain way that was hurtful, and you just want to get off the hook quickly, that scares me. Like if you say, no, I'm sorry, come on, just forgive me. If you've broken certain types of trust, you actually need more. You might need more accountability. You might need more time. You might need more openness, right? For someone to say, you could go all the way to having an affair, but they got back together, and all of a sudden, no, hey, that's behind us. I've forgiven. That's great that the one person could forgive, but the other person might have to show more accountability. Like, I have no reason not to trust my wife, so I'm not checking things. I'm not whatever, right? But if something happened and trust is being rebuilt, you might, if you're the person that did the wrong, you might have to, for life or for a long time, go over the top on amplifying that pillar or that showing openness, until you've really rebuilt it. Really show accountability, really show, whatever it is more. I mean, I don't need it. I'm not checking my wife's phone or anything, but, you can amplify these pillars until they're not needed. I mean, an example would be global, would be in the U.S. You take 50, 60 years ago, if you went in certain parts of the country, I'm in the middle of the country, middle north, it's a bit traditionally it was a bit homogenous. And so people didn't know maybe what that certain type of kung pao chicken, what is that? So in good Chinese restaurants, they showed pictures. Oh, now everybody here knows what kung pao chicken is, so they don't need to show pictures. They can just list it now. But if you go to the Ethiopian restaurant, they show pictures. What were they doing? What was that restaurant doing? That restaurant was amplifying clarity where there was less until they didn't need to. So, you can make these connections a lot of different ways. But anyway.
So one of the things I ran across whenever I was getting ready for this is on your website, you say 8 seconds is how long it takes people to start looking at their phones and wondering how soon you're going to stop talking. How do you, in those first 8 seconds, then, I'm assuming in the first 8 seconds, then you have to establish trust in the fact that they're going to get something out of what you're saying. How on earth do you do that in 8 seconds?
Building trust. So by the way, just so you were on my site where most people come to see me speak, or my personal David Horsager site, not Trust Edge Leadership Institute site, because the biggest thing I end up doing personally is, keynoting around the world. So what the team was doing with that is showing, hey, in 8 seconds, you better capture their attention and show them what's in it for them. Many speakers like, I'm cool, I get standing ovations, nobody cares. They want to know, in an instant, you've got to either, make them laugh, make a connection, or show what's in it for them. Like kind of quickly, like I have something I play in the first few seconds, a 20-second video that absolutely is very funny. It's got my kids, but it shows the impact of a lack of trust. And it's funny, connecting. Oh, now I'll listen for a second. I often say, I might say something like, the number one question everybody's asking about you is not, do I like you? Especially in sales circles, because why? They've all been taught, people buy from people they like. Not true. They buy from people they trust. So that just connect with, it's like, well, I better list this because I want to be bought from as a salesperson, So you have to quickly, I guess what a lot of speakers don't do is you do have to, in this attention span deprived culture, be engaging and entertaining without being cheesy. But you also have to show that there's some value to them within the first few seconds. That'll build trust because it's not about you. Many speakers think it's about themselves.
That's David Horsager, CEO of Trust Leadership Institute, #1 best-selling author of The Trust Edge and the new book, Trusted Leader, 8 Pillars That Drive Results. As he said, his personal website is davidhorsager.com, HORSAGER. Also, the Trusted Edge Leadership Institute's website is trusted.
No, trust, just plain Trust Edge.
Trust Edge. Yep. Or I was going to say, I was about to read Trusted GE, but it's trustedge.com, trustedge.com. And his book is trustedleaderbook.com, trustedleaderbook.com. David, any final thoughts you want to share with our listeners or anything else you'd like to promote?
Oh, I don't need to promote anything, but it's the little things done consistently that make the biggest difference. That's what builds trust over time. People that say to me, is it better to be trusted or trustworthy? It's great to create trusted leaders, organizations, and everything else. The problem is sometimes people can manipulate these pillars to appear trusted without actually being worthy of it. What we're really going for is trustworthiness. And I guess since you're giving me the opportunity, all those places to find me, I'd love to, anybody that cares about trust, wants to build trust. That's what we do, whether you're an organization, a team, or an individual. We certify independent coaches to use this work and grow their organization, or they can grow their coaching firm. They can become a trusted certified coach. If you're interested in that, we have one of the best platforms in the world to do that. And we'd love anybody that wants to from your audience to come to the Trusted Leaders Summit. This year, it's right there at a really cool hotel at the Mall of America in Minneapolis. We'll have people from deans of universities to the Senate Majority Leader of the Republic of Kenya there, but other leaders, and it's not a high price. It's a powerful leadership conference for anyone, and that's trustedleadersummit.com. I guess I would throw that out there because it's going to be really, really cool. And we just dropped the price to make it really accessible to everyone. In November.
All right. David Horsager, thank you so much for joining us on the Work From Home Show. To all our listeners, check us out at workfromhomeshow.com. We hope that we've built enough trust with you over the past few years. It's workfromhomeshow.com. Get on our mailing list. Follow us on social media. All these things, I think, help build trust. Following us on social media, checking out our website, getting on our mailing list. We hope you trust us enough to at least do that, or leave us a review on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever podcasting platform you use. And until next week, keep on working from home.